Welcome back, Defenders. Today's video, we're going to start by talking about sanctions placed by Ukraine on Russia. And when I say sanctions, I mean drone attacks. Lukoil Refinery set ablaze by Ukraine's 100-plus drone barrage. The Nizhny Novgorod oil refinery, one of Russia's largest, was previously attacked by Ukraine in early 2024, causing equipment damage that took 2 months to repair. This is where this refinery is located on the map, east of Moscow and deep into Russia. This is 800 kilometers or 500 miles from the Ukrainian border. And this is what the oil refinery looks like from satellite images. These refineries are designed to be massive, to be spread out. In the event of an accidental fire or explosion, you want to contain it. You don't want it spreading everywhere. So explain to me this video, these pictures. I'll link this down below, but it looks like the end of days. And this oil refinery was annually processing 15 million tons of crude oil. I don't know how many Ukrainian drones successfully struck it, but they overwhelmed the Russians, and this is a massive fire. And this comes just days after the Ryazan oil refinery, Russia's third largest, completely went offline. So I believe this one east of Moscow is the fourth largest. Strategic oil and military facilities hit in a massive drone strike in Russia's Tver region. This was coordinated. This was massive. This was across the board. And especially the last 2 weeks, Ukraine has been saving up these drones, preparing for this operation to cripple, to crush, to annihilate Russia's oil refining industry. 29 drones struck Russia's critical oil and military infrastructure in Tver. This is a different refinery, different location. Ukraine also struck the 23rd Arsenal military facility. They've hit this before, but I don't think it'll be as successful this time, because the Russians have finally started storing their ammunition inside the reinforced bunkers, as opposed to just leaving it out in the open like they were doing last summer. Ukrainian drones also struck the internationally vital Druzhba pipeline in Russia's Bryansk Oblast. There's pictures and videos online. I'll link them down below. But this is an oil pumping station sending oil west to Europe. And there's a difference in the pipelines. There's the gas pipelines, which all of them have been destroyed or shut off except for the Turk Stream in the south. But these are the oil pipelines. And I don't know if the pipelines were completely disrupted. The pumping station is on fire. I imagine you would have to shut down the flow of oil, but Ukraine's not holding back. Something has changed in the last 2 weeks, and Ukraine doesn't care anymore. And I do believe this is a coordinated effort to economically pressure the Russians to stop this war. Whether the EU and the United States can increase sanctions, whether OPEC can produce more, and if Ukraine can knock off these pipelines and refineries and depots. It's all happening at the same time. It's all happening in unison to force the Russians to stop this war. So if you're playing oil refinery bingo at home, the boards are filling up. I think this is the most accurate and up-to-date chart based on what refineries have been struck in the last year. You have to remember this new tactic from Ukraine started in January of 2024, and the effects take time. The effects take time, and the Russians are going to be hurting over the next couple months. And you can zoom in. We don't have close-up pictures. I imagine some will be leaked at some point. But these are very delicate distillation towers. This is how you separate the carbon chains in order to make refined oil products. And I don't know if Russia has the parts or the expertise or the technicians. And even if they did, how do you fix this in January? It is the middle of winter in Russia. And you're going to try and send repair crews outside to scale these towers in the frigid cold? None of this stuff is going to get fixed until it's warmer. None of this stuff is going to get fixed until this summer. So the Russians have noticed, and they're freaking out. Increasingly, Solyov is sounding the alarm on Kremlin State TV. And it's interesting to see how they're reacting, because they're looking for people to blame. Let me read for you what Solyov is saying. There's been another hit on our refineries. And who's going to protect them? What is the problem? Why has this issue not yet been raised at the level of the legislature, the State Duma? Write requests, ask who is responsible for the protection of all our critical infrastructure. Who is responsible? If we want to say that let the owners protect them, no problem. But let us give them this opportunity. They are ready to invest. So Solyov is suggesting that these oil companies have their own private militaries to provide air defense for their refineries and depots. Of course, it's forbidden. Who will they put there? Are they going to take people off the street and give them combat weapons? No, they can't do that. They can financially do it. They're willing to invest, but then who's in charge? Maybe it is necessary to create troops to protect especially important objects with different functions. There must be someone in the country responsible for this. We talk about this all the time, but time after time, strikes are carried out and huge losses are incurred. That actually is a good question. Who is responsible for protecting these oil refineries and depots with active air defense systems, with guys on the ground with machine guns trying to shoot down these planes packed with explosives? These oil refinery strikes have been going on for a year, and the Russians still don't know what to do about them. And this is incredibly demoralizing for the average Russian, and especially for Russian forces. Here are some translations off Telegram. These are Russian military bloggers responding to these refinery attacks. Honestly, I never thought I would read news about massive drone and missile strikes on Russia more often than on Ukraine. That's why the Ukrainians are laughing at us. No one is going to fix it yet. Here's another one. The war is in its third year. The enemy continues to successfully destroy the Russian oil refinery and fuel storage system with moped planes that fly at a maximum speed of 120 kilometers per hour and were assembled from stuff and sticks in Kharkiv garages. The oil refineries were not protected by air defense, and they're just not protected. There are not even mobile groups with small arms, or if they are, their work is not noticeable at all. I do think there are mobile units with small arms protecting these oil refineries, but if Ukraine just sends 100 at the same refinery in the same night, you're going to blow it up. You can't stop that. And the news for Russia gets worse. China and India halt Russian oil purchases for the month of March. So oil contracts are always for the future. You place an order and then it takes months for the oil to be delivered. And at the moment, both China and India are halting all their purchases of future Russian oil. Why would they do this? Well, increased shipping cost. I think that's what they're publicly saying. But China and India don't know what Donald Trump is going to do. Donald Trump is threatening increased sanctions that could be applied in the next 2 months. So at the moment, China and India are just going to put on hold all oil purchases until they know exactly what Donald Trump is going to do, because they don't want to make payments and place orders and then get caught in high-level sanctions in which they can't accept the purchases. Concerning the Shadow Fleet tankers, yeah, I think the Treasury Department is going to place more sanctions, go after more of these ships in either February or March. And if that happens, China and India have already told the Russians, we're not going to violate U.S. sanctions to help you out. I think China and India are fed up, and they want Russia to stop this war. Meanwhile, inside Russia, Russia faces surge in corporate bankruptcy, experts are warning. More than 20% of manufacturing companies were paying interest costs exceeding 2/3 of their pre-tax profits. This was as the end of 2024, compared to just 10% a year earlier. The most affected sectors include investment-intensive industries, with transport engineering companies experiencing the greatest strain. Businesses' ability to generate profits to cover loan payments is declining. It's a house of cards. These Russian companies are borrowing money to make the payments on their borrowed money. When you borrow money to make your debt payments on borrowed money, eventually you can't pay it anymore. This is just a nightmare for the Russian economy, and even if the war is frozen today, even if the war stops today, things have already been set in motion, and the Russians are screwed in the long term, but they're not thinking long term. So this is interesting. Putin gave a weird interview in the back of his car. Maybe this is a new Russian series, driving with dictators. And Putin claims Ukraine will collapse soon without Western aid. He also attacked Zelensky's legitimacy to engage in negotiations. So here's the interview. I'm going to read for you about a minute of it. I'll link the entire thing down below. Thank you so much to Natalka for these important translations. Here's what Putin says. Well, yes, if we start negotiations now, they will be illegitimate. I'm really talking about it. I didn't talk about it, but I'll tell you, there's a problem. Why? Because when the current head of the regime, as it can be called today, signed this decree, he was still a legitimate president. But now he can't nullify it because he is illegitimate. So Putin is saying that he can't engage in negotiations with Zelensky because 3 years ago, Zelensky signed a decree saying that nobody in the Ukrainian government can engage in negotiations with Russia. Zelensky did this to stop smaller actors or shadow actors in the Ukrainian government from holding secret talks with the Russians, trying to prevent Medvedchuk from claiming any kind of legitimacy to negotiate on Ukraine's behalf. So Putin is saying Zelensky was legitimate when he signed that decree, but Zelensky hasn't had an election in 5 years, so today he's not legitimate and is incapable of repealing this decree that he issued 3 years ago. It's a stupid argument, but this seems to be what Putin is fixated on at the moment. That's what's tricky. It's an ambush. Do you understand it? It's a trap. So this is Putin channeling Admiral Akbar. Please let the chairman of the Rada do it in accordance with the Constitution. This is, if there is a desire, any legal issue can be resolved. But right now we don't see such a desire. Well, I think his Western sponsors, they can't exist. They won't last a month if money, and broadly speaking, bullets stop coming. Everything will be over in a month and a half, or 2. So this is Putin saying that if all military aid to Ukraine stops today, Russia can completely win this war in 2 months. So bookmark this clip. We'll come back to it in 2 months. The fighting is not going to stop. Hopefully there's a peace deal, guys, but I don't think it's going to happen in 2 months. And I guarantee you the war is still going to be going. In this sense, Ukraine's sovereignty is almost zero. If their Western sponsors have a desire to achieve peace, the path to it is very simple. This is Putin saying, just stop militarily supporting Ukraine, I'll finish them off, and then the war is over. Putin's not looking for a ceasefire, he's not looking for a peace deal, he's looking for genocide. He just wants to kill everyone he wants to kill and take all the territory he wants to take. So now that Trump is president, we're not going to talk about Orshnik? Putin wouldn't shut up about Orshnik for over 2 months. And the second Donald Trump is sworn in, no mention of his new wonder weapon that can destroy every European capital with nuclear weapons. So this is what Putin is trying to do, and it's so transparent and it's so stupid. According to the Institute for the Study of War, Putin's rejection of Zelensky's legitimacy sets the stage for Russia to violate any future agreements. So if Putin signs something with Zelensky a year from now, 2 years from now, 3 years from now, he can just say that that agreement was illegitimate because Zelensky was illegitimate. And then he can start the war again. Take note, this guy can't be trusted. You cannot engage in negotiations with the Russians because the Russians will violate any agreements anyone makes with them. This is what they've been doing for, well, I mean, if we go back to Soviet times, we'll just say since the beginning of Russia in 1992. Here is Zelensky's reaction, and Zelensky's a genius. He knows what to say. Today, Putin once again confirmed that he is afraid of negotiations, afraid of strong leaders, and does everything possible to prolong the war. Every move he makes and all his cynical tricks are aimed at making the war endless. So this is Zelensky talking about strong leaders without mentioning Trump's name. Then down here, world leaders should take into account the mistakes of previous years, as well as the mistakes of those leaders who are no longer on the stage. So this is Zelensky referencing Biden without saying Biden's name. Pretty smart. Putin has significant capabilities to disrupt global stability, but he is too faint-hearted to withstand real pressure from strong leaders like Trump. That is why we must act decisively and in unity, all those who have the courage to believe in peace and bring it closer through strength. True peace is possible if Russia is forced into it. Okay, we're getting there, guys. And this is incredible. Zelensky was invited to appear on Fox News, and he got a friendly interview from Sean Hannity. Now, if you're not American and you're not familiar with Fox News or Sean Hannity, probably this network has been the most critical of Ukraine the last 3 years. But now that Donald Trump is president, and Donald Trump is telling them we need to help Ukraine and stop the Russians, all of a sudden people like Sean Hannity are changing their tune. So I'll link the interview down below. I didn't think it was a good interview for Zelensky because visually it didn't look good. Like the room is dark, Zelensky looked tired, and there's an English voice dub over. I would rather Zelensky just do his best to speak in English, but I understand why he's using a translator. I just don't think with the American public, the average Fox News viewer can be as sympathetic while listening to a translation. But these are actual quotes from Sean Hannity on Fox News while interviewing President Zelensky. He said, Russia's unprovoked war of aggression in Ukraine. So we're not talking about NATO enlargement anymore being the cause of this war. I am no fan of Vladimir Putin. I think he is evil, and I would like Ukraine to remain a country. Let me play for you about a minute of Sean Hannity.
Russia's unprovoked war of aggression in Ukraine continues to rage. Many are dying, infrastructure dying, but with President Trump now in office, all parties now seem to agree it is time for the violence to end. My fear for Ukraine, for your country, and you have fought valiantly, and I'm no fan of Vladimir Putin. I think he's evil, a murderer. I think all of this was unnecessary. All of it could have been negotiated from the beginning, but we are where we are, and I would like Ukraine to remain a country and not have all of its infrastructure destroyed in all of this. The president did say about Vladimir Putin, he said the following, that their economy is failing. He said settle this, stop this ridiculous war. It's only going to get worse. If we don't make a deal in soon, I'll have no other choice but to put high levels of tariffs, taxes, and sanctions on anything being sold by Russia to the U.S. and other participating countries. Let's get this war, which never should have started, if I were president, over with, make a deal. No more lives should be lost. And I hope President Trump can assist with with Vladimir Putin. Not a fan of him. I think he never should have invaded Ukraine to begin with. I think your people have fought valiantly, but I am.
You guys, Russia has officially lost Fox News. We still have to worry about OAN and Newsmax repeating Kremlin propaganda, but I think there's just too many connections between people in the Trump administration genuinely trying to help Ukraine and then the executives at Fox News. So we're now filtering out Russian disinformation from the largest conservative broadcasting network here in the United States. This is very good news for Ukraine. And I've been saying this for the last 2 months. MAGA is divided on Ukraine. This is an issue they can't agree on. I'd say about 50% of MAGA, they want to continue military aid to Ukraine. The other 50%, they're either crazy and they support Russia, or they're sympathetic to Ukraine, but they're just isolationists. They just don't think the United States should get involved. And this is what I've been telling you, but Bill Browder agrees with me. If you don't know who Bill Browder is, the Russians really hate this guy. He's probably the most important person over the last 10 years to get anti-corruption legislation passed through Western governments. The oligarchs hate Bill Browder, but Bill Browder agrees with my assessment of the people in the Trump administration today.
If he follows through, and I don't want to read too much into this because he makes one decision and he changes his decision, but reading the tea leaves from mumblings in the first few days, it's not disastrous for Ukraine. Who's he?
So Bill Browder agrees, based on the first week of Trump's presidency, it's not a disaster for Ukraine or the NATO alliance.
Listening to, do you think? Well, so there's two camps inside Washington. There's the Elon Musk, J.D. Vance, Donald Trump Jr. camp who hate Ukraine. And then there's the Marco Rubio camp, the Secretary of State, the General Kellogg, who is his special envoy to Ukraine, and his national security advisor, Waltz, who I would say, fit a lot closer into my seat in terms of being, tough on Putin, trying to help Ukraine. And he's apparently, at least in the first few days, listening to the, I would call them the professionals.
So we've got Rubio, Waltz, and Kellogg being the professionals advising Donald Trump. And then you've got the pro-Russia crazy people like Elon Musk and J.D. Vance, who basically is just Elon Musk's proxy in the administration. But Trump is listening to the professionals. Trump is actually trying to help Ukraine at the moment and trying to stop the Russians from continuing this war. Let's now quick switch to the battlefield because I think something relatively significant happened. Every day, Russia is still gobbling up a wheat field here or a tree line there. It's honestly not going to change the course of the war, and neither will this, but I do think this was symbolic. Chasiv Yar falls to Russian forces after nearly a year of intense fighting. This headline is not correct. It's not 1 year. It's 2 years. So the pre-war population of Chasiv Yar was 12,000, and who knows how many casualties the Russians took to take this city. But if you remember, Bakhmut fell to Prigozhin and the Wagner mercenaries 2 years ago. So the regular Russian military, for 2 years, has been trying to go from Bakhmut to take Chasiv Yar. This was the next city on the road. And this is 10 kilometers. 10 kilometers. The Russian military with daily attacks, daily meat waves, continuous assaults and bombardments for 2 years. They finally took Chasiv Yar, a city with a pre-war population of 12,000 people. So here's Russia's mighty victory. This is what remains of the city of Chasiv Yar after 2 years of intense fighting and aerial bombardments. I don't understand how anyone who supports Russia can view this as a victory. All the casualties they took, all of the resources they wasted to take rubble, where there's nobody and nothing left. Russian army recruitment centers in Moscow see 5-fold drop in applicants, according to Russian media. The daily number of volunteers signing up reached a high following Ukraine's Kursk offensive last summer, when Moscow started offering a one-time sign-up bonus of about $19,000. Since then, daily applicants number around 40, which is a 5-fold decrease from 6 months ago. In August, we could barely cope. People came in mass, about 200 to 250 a day. The recruitments are drying up. Even though Putin is willing to offer an ungodly amount of money for the average Russian, $20,000 as a sign-up bonus, $2,000 a month, they're just not getting the recruits. Ordinary Russians are figuring it out, that there's no point to having $20,000 when you're going to be dead in 3 months. Dead men can't spend money. The Russians are slow, but they figure it out. Russia blocks a record 417,000 websites just in the year 2024. Censorship in Russia is going insane. They recently blocked YouTube. And I do believe, guys, that when the revolution in Russia comes, they're going to shut off the internet, and it's going to be really hard to get pictures and videos and information in and out, but it's inevitable. Every day, Russia just gets closer and closer to becoming a larger version of North Korea. Ukrainian lawmakers seek to temporarily replace US AID with European funding. So the concern through the State Department, there was a 90-day freeze put on this humanitarian aid from the United States to Ukraine. But I think this is going to get reversed in the next couple weeks. I think Marco Rubio is going to make an announcement before the 90 days that they're going to unfreeze these funds and continue these programs. But in the short term, either the government of Ukraine or humanitarian aid coming from the EU can cover these projects and programs so they're not interrupted. We're doing our best, guys. Let's get to the good news for Ukraine. Italian Parliament extends military support through 2025. Thank you so much to the people of Italy. Sweden commits record $1.2 billion in military aid to Ukraine with combat boats and missiles. Thank you so much to the fantastic Swedes. We now have confirmation what this plane was. Israel sends 90 Patriot missiles to Ukraine, possibly through a pilgrimage deal. And open source intelligence noticed this military plane flying from Israel to the Polish border. And people thought this might be captured Russian weapons from Hezbollah being given to the Ukrainians. But we now got confirmation that this was Patriot missiles. Because Israel has their own preferred air defense systems, they're currently retiring their Patriot systems, and some of these missiles and systems might make their way to Ukraine. So thank you so much to the people of Israel. Okay, for my last video, I have to issue a correction. I called this animal a beaver because I didn't know what it was, but you in the comments section, many people figured it out. And this animal apparently is a nutria. I've never heard of this animal before, but the nutria is a herbivorous semi-aquatic rodent indigenous to South America. That's what it looks like. Yeah, okay, it's not a beaver. It's a nutria. Thank you. Final video I have for you is a typical day in the Russian military. This armored vehicle has become stuck, and this is how the Russians try to unstuck it.
Да ну нахуй! Блять, это что-то с чем-то.
The Russians are incompetent. That's all for this update video. Glory to Ukraine, glory to the heroes. If you found this video informative, give me a thumbs up. Best way to support the channel. Comments and questions, let me know down below. I love hearing from you guys. Till the next video, keep defending the truth, keep defending democracy.